computer. Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so part of our incentive is what you will see in the second bullet here, which is a Republicans recruitment video. So Linda, why don't you take it away?
Go ahead and start it. Okay, will
Yeah.
do.
If this doesn't scare you, I don't know what will.
Democrats are pushing a radical Marxist agenda, while weak Republicans let it happen. Do you feel helpless? Want to know how to fight back? Well, here's the answer. The PrecinctStrategy.com is a free resource on how to become your local GOP precinct committeeman. Precinct committeemen help elect county chairmen, officers, and even delegates to the RNC. There are over 400,000 committeeman seats across the U.S. But what the GOP establishment doesn't want you to know is that 200,000 of those seats are vacant. We need America First patriots to fill these seats. It's time to fight and kick the rhinos out. Help take back our party. You can make a difference. And PrecinctStrategy.com will show you how. Take action now. Be a warrior. Help save this great country. Visit PrecinctStrategy.com now.
So of course, the focus of this particular video is to become a precinct committee person, which is also a very viable option for a lot of us. So why don't we move on now to Linda Callis, who will introduce our next speakers.
Okay, thanks, Flo. So we have with us today Jim McGrath and Joyce Slavic, and they are from the Northwest Suburban Chicago Indivisible. I'll let them explain the initials. It's NSSOFA, which might be of America, I'm not sure. But they're part of an Indivisible group. But importantly, the reason we asked them to come today is they have been focused on what's going on in the school boards all year and who's behind it, and trying to follow the money and figure out, you know, why is this happening? So they're gonna, you know, share what they've learned, and at the end, we're gonna give time if you have any questions of them. So Jim and Joyce, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me, if you stop sharing, I can share my screen.
Yep.
Okay. Just while I'm doing this, the OFA part was Obama for America. After he got elected his second time, we changed it to Organizing for Action. And then when that group was no longer being existent, we joined Indivisible about 4 years ago. So we became an Indivisible group, but we kept our NWSOFA name. Let me see. There we go. Am I? I think I'm sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's just dive right into this. So Joyce and I started attending school board meetings years ago when the Illinois Association of School Boards was trying to have proposals to arm school teachers. We kept going to school board meetings. Last summer, when these things got very raucous, we were complaining on an Indivisible call, and somebody said, well, why don't you guys talk about your experiences on this Saturday call? So we did, and they were very interested, and they said, why don't you guys do this every month? So this last Saturday, or no, I'm sorry, on the 16th, we just did our 9th 1-hour meeting on these things, and it's different every month. So I hope, so this is kind of a summary of what we've been talking about, but this is what started out to be the issues, we thought. But they're actually just Trojan horse, dog whistles to get parents involved. What their goal is to get parents involved for the midterms. So what's it really about? It's about, they want to take control of the school board, followed by control of the school curriculum. Why do they want to control the school curriculum? Because they don't want anybody talking about race or LGBTQ or any sex issues. They want to control what's taught. They don't want a complete education. Like getting candidates elected to the board who can run for higher offices. This is happening all the time. Once they get name recognition in the community, they can run for higher offices. It's about getting parents to remove their kids from public schools, put them in private or charter schools, take money away from the public schools. It's all about dismantling our public schools. That is stated on several of these websites that we've profiled over the last 9 months. So what they want us to think about is that this is grassroots. It's not. It's coming from well-funded national organizations, people like the Koch brothers, Betsy DeVos, her organization, the Walmart, group. They're becoming. If you've ever been to one of these school board meetings, Joyce and I have been to these things when they have to take people out. The police have to take people out because they become unruly. It's really kind of disgusting how some of these people behave in school board meetings. But what they're turning it into is school boards they want school board elections to be partisan. Here's an example. In Pennsylvania, a Republican donor is going to put $500,000 into school board races across the state. And this is somebody from Iowa. We're in a culture war. They are declaring the culture war, not us. That's what they're declaring. And they're declaring that because they don't want this boogeyman, CRT, which doesn't exist, taught in K through 12. Okay. It's a loose network of conservative groups with ties to major Republican donors, and these party think tanks. For example, the Koch brothers fund over 30 different groups that are generating this culture war information that we have to try to conflict. So. And here again, this is why they are trying to get parents involved. Now, the only reason that I put this in here is because it's in Milwaukee. It's in what they were trying to do is they're trying to remove school board members because they approved the hiring of a diversity consultant. The key here is Parents Defending Education. This is a group that sounds like a nice group. Oh, the Defending Education. They're not defending education the way it should be taught. They're defending education the way they want it to be taught. They got to be careful with the names of some of these groups. Now, this is from the Illinois Association of School Boards. What is the role of a school board? Provides local citizen control over education at the point closest to the parent and child. That doesn't mean parents dictate what's going on at the school. What it means is we're in a representative democracy, which means we elect people to represent us at the school board, at your local village, in Congress, in the state legislature. We elect people to vote for things the way we hope they vote. Okay, so the right wing is trying to take this and say we want direct control. Well, that's not how a representative democracy works. Here's a couple other things that I thought you'd be interested in. I just included it off. This is from the IASB website. So this is our flyer. We recently changed it to, it used to be combating. We thought that was too confrontational. So now it's confronting disinformation at school boards and protecting and defending education. So the goal, as I said, is about taking control of the school board. They want to dismantle our public education system. And we're hoping that based on this meeting, our next meeting is going to be May 21st, that you start to attend these things. Joyce has got some actions that everybody can take when we're all done going through this presentation. Our focus is on disinformation. The mainstream media uses the wrong term, I would say 90% of the time. They refer to this as misinformation. Misinformation is just a mistake. Disinformation is when it's deliberately deceptive in order to accomplish a certain goal. So we are talking about disinformation, not misinformation. If you haven't heard about the Illinois Indivisible Truth Brigade, they are now meeting on Fridays, I think at 11 o'clock every Friday. And they figure out how to come up with responses to the various issues that come up. So critical race theory, that is turning school boards into a GOP proving grounds. Because this is what they want to do. They want to grow the ranks of Republican politicians, as we've talked about in some of these previous slides. And why are they focusing on school boards? Because it's generally out of the spotlight of the general population. Most of these municipal elections only draw 10 to 12% of the electorate. So if they get a lot of their people to come out and vote, they get their candidates in. What we have to do is make sure we energize our side and they get out and vote, not just at the midterms, which is going to be important, but also at the next school board elections, which are next April of 2023. The Republican Party seems a rich opportunity to build a pipeline of new political candidates. In other words, get them on the school board. Now they have name recognition. Now they can run for state offices and or et cetera. So there are right-wing groups that are training activists to take over school boards. Again, the wealthy Republicans are funding these kind of organizations to train these people. What they're trying to do is create a second Tea Party movement. Again, here, they want to stifle teaching and discussion about racism in U.S. history. Now think about this. How are teachers going to teach the Constitution? Because there was a lot of discussion to accommodate slave owners when the Constitution was being written. Will a teacher be ostracized because she teaches the whole truth about the Constitution? That's one of the issues that we could be facing. Okay, now this is, again, they're trying to spin this. The left, that's us, has spent many years and vast funding to stack local school boards, which is so untrue. I mean, school board candidates typically have to fund their own campaign. Now, where did this critical race theory come from? Christopher Rufo. He's a senior analyst at Manhattan Institute. He decided that he needed to come up with a nice buzzword that he could do this, run a public persuasion campaign, and his plan was to conflate any number of topics into this new bucket called critical race theory. So critical race theory is gone way beyond what it really is. Most people, when you talk to them, will say, if they say they're against critical race theory, they can't tell you what critical race theory is. Okay, and this is his comment here. We have successfully frozen their brand, critical race theory, into a new public conversation. We will eventually turn it toxic, which they have, and put all the various cultural insanities under that brand category, which they have done. So more from Christopher Rufo. This started with Trump, okay? And if you remember, in September of 2020, just a couple months before the election, Trump ordered an end to diversity and equity training for all federal contractors. That came only after Rufo appeared on the Tucker Carlson Fox News show to equate equity and social justice with critical race theory. So they are related, but they're not equal. Now, you may be aware of a group called Awake Illinois. It was started by a Naperville parent, Shannon Adcock. She ran for the school board in Naperville based on her platform of, we can't have critical race theory being taught. She lost her election. but that didn't end her desire to continually go after critical race theory. So she started this group called Awake Illinois. This is from their website. What they're trying to do is school board outreach, do FOIA requests, freedom of information requests. Joyce is going to talk about that in a little bit. And this that I have on the right here, that's a brochure that they've got, a guideline on how to talk to your school board, your school district about critical race theory. So there are now 31 chapters. I couldn't find them all, but here's some of them. Now this is an undated letter from Awake announcing the Awake chapter that was formed in Palatine sometime last year. So the undated letter refers to that it's a 501c. Now we all know 501c is not a designation. It's 501c3 or 501c4. I looked them up. They are 501c3, which means they can't lobby for any legislation. But if you read this letter, that's what they're trying to do. So here, now this bill has been stuck in rules since June 15th, 2021. It's going nowhere, but it was their version of the SB 818, and then SB 818, which they are against. That's the health education bill that they claim is a sex education bill. So that was both in their welcome letter to the new members of this Palatine chapter. Now, this is an interesting comment from a school board candidate in a Republican campaign manager for a school board candidate in a Connecticut town. She said, helping kids of color to feel they belong has a negative effect on white Christian or conservative kids. White Christian conservative kids. The Christian right is weighing in on this issue. And what they're saying is they're saying this is a zero-sum game. So if the students of color gain, the white students lose. Well, it's not a zero-sum game. When the tide rises, all boats float, right? So this is something that we have to keep in mind. That's their mantra to say when the black students or students of color gain, the white kids lose. So she said her statement was poorly worded. Now the chairman of their school board questioned her and said, exactly what context would that comment be positive in? So she was trying to spin it that what she really meant was something good, which clearly isn't. Now, talk a little bit about the religious right. Now, I put this picture in the upper right-hand corner. There are several former Trump officials running some of these organizations. This is Russ Vought, who runs a group called Center for Renewing America. Sounds like something we should all be for, right? But they're not. Religious right groups and leaders are playing their part in right-wing movement to restrict teaching about systemic racism. Again, the religious right groups, we've got to be careful with this. Under the guise of protecting children from critical race theory. So now you get, again, guess who's pushing it? Tucker Carlson. Now, I have seen this used, you guys probably have it as well, that if you support critical, if you support complete teaching, including teaching about slavery and racism, you're a Marxist, you're anti-white, you're America hater. Well, actually, it's just the opposite. Another group, sounds like a great group, Family Research Council. But they're not. Here's a picture of the president, and he is hosting podcast called Pray, Vote, and Stand. So again, it's a religious right group. He's ignoring the fact that these right-wing groups are already heavily involved in school board takeovers. He's trying to portray what he's doing as grassroots. Now, again, that is happening in every city, every village. These local groups are trying to portray themselves as grassroots, but they're getting their information from these national organizations. So again, he wants to replace radical school board members with Christian conservative parents. What happened to separation of church and state? Everybody remember Stephen Miller, the skinhead that worked for Trump? He is now president of a group called America First Legal. And he is saying that this equity agenda is illegal and it's poisonous because it's supporting critical race theory. Oh, another word that you hear a lot is indoctrination. The teachers, if they're teaching anything about race, it's not teaching, it's indoctrination, because it's negative. That's a negative term. So critical race theory, as applied to the United States, says education is inherently racist and exists to create and maintain social economic inequalities. Now, you may have noticed on most of these pages, I have a link at the bottom to where the information came from. And Linda, I will send this to you when we're done. Most of these links still work. Some of these links are a few months old, and the publication has discontinued that link. I apologize for that, but I thought it was still important to include that. So Koch-backed groups, again, funding a lot of groups. This Independent Women's Forum, again, sounds like a great group. This is a picture of them in the upper right. Do they look like friendly people to you? I mean, this is what Joyce and I have seen at school board meetings. Okay. But the appeal, we have to remember, this is not the product of a grassroots groundswell. It's the template drafted and circulated by these conservative networks built on the Koch fortune and the money from other GOP mega donors. Now, this is right from the Independent Women's website. I love some of this terminology. Do you want to engage with fellow patriotic? It has to be patriotic. Just remember, those that stormed the Capitol on January 6th, they referred to themselves as patriots. So they are putting a different spin on the word patriot. They're home to independent, civically engaged, truth seekers, freedom fighters, game changers, policymakers who want to secure a platform for honest conversation. Well, I can't imagine being in a conversation with this group, but if you want to be a member, there's a monthly fee. You can pay a monthly fee, or you can pay it quarterly, or you can pay it annually. Americans for Prosperity, promoting the demise of public education. Another group that you need to be aware of, groups called Americans for Prosperity. This is just one of their tenets. They are trying to dismantle public education. Now, this is a rather old slide. It's from 2018. It started in California. It's now come to the Midwest. These FOIA requests are overburdening our public schools. These people are inundating public schools with FOIA requests. Now, if a FOIA request has to be responded to within 5 days after the government agency receives the FOIA request, or they can be fined. So this is what this one woman was doing. She wanted, read this, she wanted all the phone logs, all the electronic communications, and the calendars for a former employee over a 4-year period with that included over 300,000 emails. Now, in order for them to provide this FOIA requester of these emails, they have to read every one of them and redact like students' names and other information that has to be kept confidential. So you can imagine how much time this takes, first to find them, then to read every one of them and to redact them. And that is going on at every one of our school board or school districts, guaranteed right now. Okay, there were a couple of bills in Springfield this year. They didn't go anywhere. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on them, but they were proposed by Republicans, and they were bills to, handcuff local school districts. Takeaways from our discussion tonight. The disruptions at school board meetings are not grassroots inspired. Well-funded organizations with the goal of taking over the school boards are driving this. That includes the harassment and intimidation of common sense school board members, causing them to resign. Last year, 2 school board members from St. Charles resigned. There's probably more that have resigned that we haven't heard about. But what they want to do is then run their candidates to take their place. Religious right is deeply involved. Okay, now, this was published in the December issue of NEA magazine, National Education Association. So step 1, use the media to drum up a culture war. CRT, gender, LGBTQ issues, which they've been successfully doing. Think about the Virginia election where Youngkin won. He won because he promoted that he didn't want CRT taught in the schools in Virginia. CRT wasn't being taught, but nobody took the time to find that out. Media was carrying information about CRT right up until election day in Virginia. And after that, the placements on CRT in Virginia virtually stopped. So they want to win election by stoking fears around these issues, which they are doing, and they're doing it by going to school board meetings. Frame attempts to update the curricula, in other words, to teach about racial issues, teach about the Tulsa riots, the Chicago riots, that they're saying that they're an attack on American values. Those American values that they talk about are white Christian values. Then they want to demand, they want to take the kids and put them in private schools or charter schools, then demand vouchers. That will be the end of public education. And then they want to support politicians who support cuts for education. Now, this is from the NEA president, her comment. These dangerous attempts to stoke fears and rewrite history not only diminish the injustices experienced by generations of Americans, they prevent educators from challenging our students to achieve a more equitable future. All we want is our students to get a complete, well-rounded education, not something that's been sanitized by a group who thinks they know better. So bottom line, so what do we do? Joyce is going to review a number of activities that you can all do. We have a meeting coming up on May 21st. We are part of the Illinois Indivisible Illinois Social Justice Alliance. We present on the 3rd Saturday of every month. And as I said before, every presentation is different because we have people sending us links to all these different activities. We sort through them and put them into a 1-hour presentation to update people on what's new. Now, this is key. A highly motivated minority will overcome a complacent majority. Right now, the other side is highly motivated. We can't be complacent. If not us, who? If not now, when? Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Joyce, and I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, thanks, Jim. So it gets really overwhelming. We know there's a lot of big money. They're well organized, but really the key is we can't despair. We have to keep going. And let me start my slideshow here. And it is exhausting, but the thing that drives me is if your voice isn't there, think about whose voice is going to fill the void, who's going to be talking to the school board and getting their voice heard. So I break it down into 3 different things, really: prepare, share, and then be there. So prepare is not all school boards are at the same point. Some of us are trying to protect a progressive school board or a moderate school board. Other ones are trying to fight back and get rid of a very conservative school board who's trying to, keep from teaching about equity and LGBTQ students' rights. So for preparing is really just to learn about where your school district is at. We don't have to necessarily, every person doesn't have to say the world. If you can focus on your individual school boards, that's going to be a huge thing to protect. Ways to find out about where your school board is at. Most school boards now have, and have been for quite a while, they actually live stream the board meetings themselves, and they save them so you can go find out. You can, go through it quickly, see what kind of topics are going on. The agendas are online, so you can find out an awful lot of information about what's going on. Finding out about your school board members. You can look certainly at old debates or do some social media search. You're going to learn pretty quickly when you observe a few school boards what they stand for and really how they vote. Find out about your school board curriculum policies. Like Jim said, CRT is not taught in lower education. It's only taught in higher education. But do find out about your district's equity or wellness programs. If they have an equity and or a wellness program, you're already in pretty good shape because that's already above where a lot of school districts are. A lot of us that have these fairly new equity programs are fighting to keep them alive. My school district, D211, is just about to hire a district-wide equity officer. Our 2 conservative board members have been trying to kill that program and that office for quite a while. So we're really working to just protect it. Wellness really gets into, there's some racial components to that, but that's primarily focusing on protecting mental health, sex ed, and also focusing on protecting LGBTQ students. Look up your strategic plan. You may or may not have one. We're working on our strategic plan at D211, and it's great to be focused on that because you'll notice in there if they talk about equity, inclusion, protecting kids' mental health rights, that's really kind of sets the blueprint for where the school district wants to go. Sign up for webinars on these different topics on, equity, wellness, school board, book bans, even if you can't make them, because you'll start to get into those, you'll get recordings or you'll hear about other ones. Share is really starting to share about the information. As we all know, people in Indivisible are well aware that it's all about networking and coalition building. Recognize that when you go to your school board meetings, if you show up in person, start recognizing who is showing up, who's speaking, are they organized, do they carry signs? We've had the Proud Boys show up at our school board meetings. The conservative groups, we start to know who they are. Join local progressive groups. So, if you're already in Indivisible, you're already in a pretty good spot. But find out about, if there's, again, try to coalition build with other districts in your network. There's a lot of Facebook pages, progressive Facebook pages, focused specifically on your school boards, your towns, your nearby towns. Try and find out what those are to at least, so when you need them to show up, you can say, hey, there's a school board meeting coming up on Thursday, and this is what they're talking about. And you probably have seen this as well, but a lot of those groups are starting to become private. So make sure that it's really a lot of in-person networking, and then you'll find out about those different groups. And again, you're not going to have to spend all day on Facebook, but you can at least post when there's something important to share. Share, collaborate, network. We have to make sure that we are getting our numbers to show up to protect each other and to make sure that our voices are being heard and for the kids and for public education. Find teachers, particularly retired teachers are more likely to speak. Active teachers are certainly less likely, understandably. Medical professionals, mental health professionals, have them show up to meetings and get them if they're willing to speak. Those are the people that are going to be listened to quite often, and they'll be interviewed if there happens to be a newspaper person there. Create a group to attend board meetings. So there's safety in numbers. You can wear similar colors, and even if they tell you that, be respectful, certainly be respectful, but you can clap if you agree with what they say in the public education or in the public comments. And sometimes we've had signs that have a hashtag honesty in education just to show that, the board, where we stand and the people at the meeting. Excuse me. Find the allies at the board meeting. So again, it's about networking. Show up early. If you sit together, you'll start meeting other people who are allies, and that you can support the same kind of topics. Again, equity, wellness. Those are really what we're after. Excuse me. And then any online petitions. They don't necessarily make change, but I saw a petition to help get Sharon Adcock not to be on that culture board. Those are a big deal. They may not necessarily affect policy, but you can use those to say, hey, look, there are a lot of people that believe in this. And then be there. Showing up is critical. So again, if you're trying to protect that school board or you're trying to change it, you have to show up. Contact the school board by email. Excuse me. And attending school board meetings is so important. If you can get a regular group, but if you can keep getting other people to show up, that really helps a lot. Sign up to speak, find out on the online agenda. Usually you'll find that out a couple days ahead of time. You'll find out when the public comments are, how long you'll have, 3 to 5 minutes normally. Sign witness slips related to education, super important. Show up at focus groups, workshops, or principal parent events. So if you have a student in the district, you'll be able to, you'll see a lot of these come up. We've had several focus groups in my district over the last year related to equity and also our strategic plan. Letters to the editor, really important. Running for office, as I know you have a piece in the agenda after we get through this part. We all know that that's really the bottom line, what we really need to do. And if you can't run for office, find progressive people to run for office. Other people. If somebody is just asked, you'd be surprised how many people will say that, I've been thinking of it, but when they're asked, it might push them into thinking about it more seriously. FOIA request, we actually have, Jim and I have a special section on FOIA requests that we will present at our Saturday meeting. This is a huge thing that's happening. The FOIA requests are normally in the agenda online, and it's important because you can see who's making requests, those bad faith requests. You can find out what kinds of things that they're going to start talking about. Sex ed is a big thing that they're going to start attacking after SB 818, Keeping You Safe and Healthy Act passed last year. And be a good troll. So if you go on their sites, do screenshots, know who they are, keep track of who they are, so you know if they're running for office or when they're showing up these school board meetings. Some of them are literally just trying to harass and attack school board members, good school board members, to get them to resign or not run again. And certainly make sure to vote. I know we're a little short on time, so I'm just going to go through these last kind of quicker. Just messaging, be inclusive, reclaim words like freedom and choice. We want freedom to pursue honest and accurate education. Say what we're for. Don't amplify their voice by talking about their issues. Say what we want. We want equity. We want wellness. We want to raise every child. And here's some messaging resource, kind of a busy slide, but if people did a screen grab, I wanted to have it all on there. And I'll share this after I'm done as well. Some public comment samples. These are great. You can use them to send to your school board or use these in a public comment section. You don't have to speak a long time to say you support teachers, you support public education, and you support an honest education about race and racism in this country and in your school district. Some tips on writing letters to the editor. Some tips for running for office. A great group called, there's a guide here running specifically for school board. There's also some other links here running for school board. If you're not aware of something called Run for Something, they actually support and help candidates who are thinking for running. Talk to local progressive groups, and certainly talk to current board members, especially people that you think that you have a lot in common with. Ask them about what it takes and how much time they spend, things like that. Book bans are becoming a huge thing. That's also really curricula bans where they're trying to fight against teaching about race and LGBTQ rights. There's some great things. Red, Wine, and Blue has a book ban. It's shocking when you go to that link to see how close those are. They're all over the country, and it's pretty scary. If they haven't banned it, they've tried in pretty much every state. And know that, we are all the ones we're waiting for. We can't, it's not going to be somebody else. So like Jim said, if it's not us, then who? We all have to step up in any capacity that we can. If we can't run for something, then we can certainly support somebody and do whatever we can to help good people get elected.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you so much, Jim and Joyce. That was very informative, and hopefully maybe get somebody thinking about running. And I will go back to sharing my screen with the agenda and back to Flo.
Okay, thank you so much for all this information. We hope that you will share those links with us so that we can send them out to our audience tonight. I wanted now to pivot to Diane Hewitt, who will talk a little bit about the open positions that we currently expect in our April 23 elections. So Diane, you want to take it away?
Sure. Let me just share the right screen. Thank you. Okay, so Lisle Township is very similar to all of your townships, really. In Illinois, we're divided up into 36 square mile township grids. And so one of the things that we've been focused on for many years is the municipal cycle. And so you're going to have trustees of whatever municipal village or city that you have. And most of the time, they're paid a stipend of a nominal amount. They meet at different times. You can always get the packet, usually at the municipality. And then you're going to have at various times on 4-year cycles, the mayor of different municipalities. You'll have the park district people. Park district and school board tend to not be paid. They're labors of love, and we need you to do them on so many levels because like school boards control the majority of your tax dollars. And so of all things, like if you want to have like a high home to resell, like a price to resell, it's really important that your school boards stay at a certain level as well. As well as all the other important things that happen with school boards that we know so much about. And then they all tend to be on different cycles. Usually it's a 4-year term, sometimes a 2-year term for all of these. Library boards, again, are also unpaid, but they're super critical to deciding what kind of information we get and all the types of books that we can read, and the free things that the library does to spread education and knowledge are so critical. Whereas, it's one of those things where comparatively, the reach of the education boards, of the library, of the park districts is so profound. For the 14% that tend to turn out on those elections, it's amazing that you have such a high impact on those. Then there's sometimes fire districts. There's, of course, the COD districts that we care very much about. And then there's the assessors. The reason why we're bringing up the assessors in all the townships, not just Lisle, is that you have to be ready for it 2 years in advance. And so that's like really quick. And that means that you have to start like you're going to get ready for it now. And so the reason how they've kept it in their own control, meaning the other sides, is because we've never really broken through getting 2 years in advance those educational credentials that could then allow you to run in 2025. So you really have to be years in advance to be able to do some of this stuff. And so, of course, there's a lot of great groups that you can work with. I'm going to put in the chat a group that I lead, which is an organization that I don't care where you live in whatever county that you're in. And we will help train you on, as long as you're a Democrat, we'll train you on how to win. I'm pretty good at winning elections. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now kind of the main event here is we do have an experienced panel. I think I'll pass this off to Ursula, who is facilitating the panel, and will introduce our panelists. So Ursula, you want to take it away?
Hey, thank you, Flo. Before I move on, I want to vouch for Diane's class. As an office holder and former student of Diane's, I can say that her class was very informative, in-depth, and really set up the stage for a successful campaign. So I want to say thank you, Diane, and vouch for that class of hers. And let's bring in some of our panelists. We have a variety of different offices represented in our panels. And let me go through them one by one. Emily Schultz, if you could wave at us or raise your hand. There you are, Emily. Emily is a newly elected board member for District 45 School Board. She's an attorney, a small business owner, and has 3 children that will go to District 45 schools. She's District 45 SACID representatives. SACID is responsible for providing special education services to the majority of students who reside within the member district's boundaries. It's a really cool cooperative. Her top goals as a board member are to ensure the equitable division of resources, ensure that students of all abilities are able to succeed within the school system, and increase the board's transparency and communication with stakeholders. So I want to say welcome, Emily. And our next panelist that I want to introduce is Justin Lynch. Hi, Justin, give a wave. Thank you. Justin Lynch. Hi. Justin Lynch is a 32-year resident of Carroll Stream and elected to the Library Board of Trustees in 2015, currently serving as board president. Elected with the help of a grassroots local group, which has formed to take back control of the library board from the Tea Party. So a success story in the kind of turnaround that we're talking about in the first half. The next panelist I want to introduce is Tom Klistic. Tom, where are you?
So Ursula, unfortunately, Tom had to get off. He had a baby that wouldn't stop crying.
So let's hope that Tom joins us back again, but he just—
I don't know if he'll be able to get back in, so you'll have to move on to the next panelist.
Oh, I'm sorry. We also have Margaret De La Rosa, who is a resident of Glen Ellen. Hi, Margaret. She's a mother of 3 children who attended Glenbard District 87, which is a high school district. She's a former president of the League of Women Voters in Glen Ellen, a past PTA council and Hadley PTA president. In her non-public life, she is a human resources professional and employed with a Korean-owned logistics business in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. So welcome, panelists. And if I could ask you to all unmute or to take turns, I'll start off with some questions. They're all about running for the elected office that you're sitting in right now, what it's like to do the job, so that we can get a little bit more informed about what this whole being an elected local representative means. So the first question I have for everyone is, what inspired you to run for office originally? And if I could start with Emily.
Thank you. That's actually a really great question, because I never in a million years thought that I would actually run for public office. I've always been interested in politics. I was a poli-sci major before I went to law school. And obviously moving to Lombard and buying a home and starting my family, I was always particularly interested in our local politics, because as we all know, national and state politics are so important to pay attention to, but local politics really have the most impact on your day-to-day life. And so I have 3 young kids, and so I'm out there using the library, and obviously invested in our school districts and have always been really involved. Fortunately, our school district really has done a fantastic job. We just passed a referendum a couple of years ago to which we should be finishing up construction at the end of this year, we have a new early childhood center, to have full day kindergarten. So our district was really doing great things and embracing diversity and equity training following everything that happened with George Floyd. So really, I always saw myself more as like a supporter in the background. But then when COVID happened, Jim and Joyce really nailed it on the head of everything that's been going on. And I saw candidates that were going to run who had no vision for our district aside from tearing it down. And that like mama bear in me came out and kind of in my head was like, over my dead body, is that going to happen? But again, I have 3 young kids, so I didn't think I would have the time to run a successful campaign. But a group of friends of mine actually formed a group called DuPage for Progress, which was an offshoot from a Lombard anti-racist group. And their whole main focus was to get progressive candidates elected into local office. And so if I didn't have that support, I don't think I would have been successful, just in terms of understanding what goes into a campaign. And actually one of my friends, she was running in Lombard, but did all of my lit drops for me in Villa Park because I had my kids. So really without having that strong support system, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So that's kind of how I got where I am.
That sounds good. It's good that you had so much support. I want to move on to Justin.
Yeah, Ursula, I actually agree with Emily right there. So I agree that, local politics really makes the most difference. And so the question is what inspired you to run for office originally? And, as you mentioned in the bio introduction there, so essentially the Tea Party had taken control of our library board. This is all the way back in 2011, actually. So, a group of citizens got together, and it's lucky because I actually came part of the second wave, basically. So in 2013, 3 trustees were elected to the Carol Stream Public Library Board who sort of changed the balance of power and, got some of them out. And then I jumped on in 2015. So we actually, and it's funny, I just came from their house earlier tonight. So we had people to make signs, people who worked with sort of the books, people who, were messaging experts. And this is all at a local library board race, right? So not, big potatoes by any means, but it inspired me to run for office because then most of all I'm a library user. I mean, I love the library and I have for a very long time. So I could talk to the issues and when I went door to door talking to people, I think some of that passion or whatever at least comes through as authentic and talking to people. So at some point it really was an issue of okay, I wanted to sort of to jump in and get people off the board who didn't share the vision that we should have a strong library for our community. But, ultimately it ended up morphing into a huge building renovation project. I mean, a couple other initiatives as well. So I could say it's been 7 years I've been on the board. It's been very rewarding and definitely glad I did it.
Awesome. Thank you. And Margaret.
So what inspired me to run? I'm in my 2nd term. So I'm in the 7th year of what will be 8 years when I'm done. I was actually, prior to being on the board, I was on a finance committee. So even though I work in HR today, I actually went to school for accounting and spent a lot of my career in that field. And then through some projects, transitioned to HR, which I really love. Anyway, so I was on a committee, a finance committee, which you have to interview for. And to me, it was like a natural offshoot of being involved with League. The League had studied a referendum that the district had tried to accomplish. And it was the first time that they came, to bring the referendum. We actually voted against it, which is not usually what the League is about. But and so that was really my initial engagement. But really, what made me run was so after being on this finance committee was really the people, the chair of not the chair, but the administrator involved in the finance committee said to me, "You really should run for the board. You really know what's happening here. And, we really need, a good board member." And so that's what, and at first I was like, oh, no, I'm completely happy being on the committee, coming for my hour or 2 hours every couple of weeks. And I really don't need to be on, a voting member. And then I would stay for board meetings and, But the most of the board meeting is really about what runs the district, which is the finances. So I ran. I had some friends who are league members who helped me, get signatures, and then I ran and was actually I got more votes than sitting board members, and was twice endorsed by the Daily Herald. And really, it just spoke about what my knowledge was about the district. So that's really what inspired me to run, and the positive experience is my kids had, and the long time that I had spent in the district, and to see its progress and to want to continue that.
Thank you, Margaret. I think the theme here was that little involvements became big involvements, right? Which is awesome that you actually, all three of you, decided to recognize that and do it. That's what public service is about, right? Could you describe next your general responsibilities in your position? So I know Emily and Margaret, you are school board members at different levels of education, and Justin, you're part of a library board. So we'll get those three different perspectives of those three types of boards. Could we start with Justin this time?
Yeah, sure. So I think the best way to think of it is that, your day-to-day staff sort of run the day-to-day of, the library. So the library director really is the only employee that answers directly to the library board. And then she manages the assistant director, all the other department managers and stuff like that. So I think the best way to think of it is we sort of do the big picture, reviewing finances. So, each month we review any sort of purchase that's made, although we only actually approve anything over $5,000. I think it's a fine line between micromanaging, which, we don't want to do. We want to leave the professionals who are actually librarians, to run the day-to-day. But some of the big picture things like our renovation. So, that was a multi-year project where, we talked with our library director. We had community groups, which eventually, led to our building was, 35, 40 years old and didn't meet the needs of our community. And we understood that through focus groups and, online surveys. And so sort of made the conscious decision to start saving money. And then in a little bit of local history, and Carol Stream had voted down building referendums for a new library 3 times. So we understood sort of that was the will of the community. So we had to live within our means, and we ended up, really meeting with different architects, different construction managers. I mean, it really was a long-term process. So once that was complete, then, and I think it was mentioned earlier in this program, working on the strategic plan. So, I can't agree enough. That really is a key thing. And that's probably going to be our next big initiative eventually as a board, is to get together to figure out exactly, what's next for our community or library. We have this great new building where people are still getting sort of used to coming back into public, attendance is way up among our patrons. So what do we do next? I think an EDI initiative is huge in that. We have an EDI board with our community. We had one as a board, which, we want to start back up again. So really part of it is finance, but the actual day-to-day stuff, I will say, as a library board trustee, having a once monthly meeting, for people who are thinking about running for office, it's not a huge time commitment too, which is nice. I think we all have busy work lives and personal lives. So, not every board is an intense time commitment, but, overall general responsibility, I think it's probably a pretty good overview, I would say.
Thanks, Justin. And Margaret, could I have you go next?
Sure. I don't want to scare anyone because that's not the intention here. I chair, as a board member, you have to chair 2 committees. So I chair finance, which I've been on for years. Really good use of my accounting background, know how to read financial statements. And I chair a communication and legislation committee. So all new legislation that impacts schools. But I think what's interesting, I'm just going to tag on to Justin here. One thing that you never realize is what you become expert in on a board, because where children go to school, no matter what their age. And the things that are the center of your community, which are your schools, are your public assets. And so buildings need to be maintained, and you get into the nitty gritty of, a boiler needs to be replaced, or we did a solar installation on Glenbard East High School, which is a very large high school, and that entire roof is now covered in solar panels, and that project will pay for itself. But to dig into that level of information, there were many Saturdays when we put together our master facility plan. This is, quite a few years ago now. But and what I emphasize with people is that it's the public, those are your public assets. But in terms of commitment, besides, so I have 2 committees that I am either chair or I am on, and plus board meetings, and we meet twice a month for. It depends. When we have people that show up and give a lot of public comment, that takes away public comment that was actually in the presentation by Jim. It takes away from what we really need to do, which is to focus on having the proper facilities and giving time for educational professionals to present some of the things that they are doing in order to support students. So I appreciate your getting the base excited about coming to meetings, because I agree with you that if your voice isn't there, that void definitely gets filled by a lot of disinformation. So.
And thank you, Margaret. Could I have Emily share her role as well now?
Sure. So I don't know that I have that much more to add. Our school district obviously is situated similarly and organized similarly to even the library board. As a school board member, our main job is the big picture policy and like where we want to see our district go. And we don't really get involved in the day-to-day stuff. That's more of like administration and the teachers, but we do hire and evaluate our superintendent. So we agree on goals that we'd like our superintendent to execute, and then hold him or her accountable throughout the year, and then do a yearly evaluation and go from there. And obviously overseeing all the financials and stuff like that, but really more the big picture stuff. And we have most months we have 2 meetings, and they can go quite not to scare anybody, but they can go pretty long. We've had 8-hour meetings. I've gotten home at 2 a.m. It's a lot, but it's good. It's rewarding work. Yeah, I don't know that I have that much more to add that hasn't already been covered.
So Emily, what was at the 8-hour meeting? Like, what made it run so long?
Public comments. We were trying to decide the mask issue, and we actually had a safe room that we had to go use, and the police had to come and shut down our meeting. So we had to do all of that. So then our next meeting, we just had to really sit through public comments again, and then go back and do everything that we didn't get to do. But our board, I have to say, we just have really thoughtful conversations about issues. Like nobody phones it in really. So we really take our time and discuss and listen to each other, which is really great. But that also means that we have some very, very long meetings.
Well, thank you, Emily, and thank you for sitting through some of those long meetings. I guess I wanted to add too, because I watch school board meetings all the time as well, that if you're thinking about running for yours, take a look at what your local school district meetings look like, because some of them can be as short as Justin's. Like, are there like that? If we have a 2-hour meeting, that's long for us. And others can be, in the Emily and Margaret level of commitment. So it really depends on your local board that you're running for. And then I wanted to move on to another question that is a little bit related. What do you find the most rewarding in your role? And can I start with Margaret this time? Let's change it up.
Oh, that is easy. Two things, both on the hard side and the soft side. So I was part of, like I said, we had a master facility committee. And if you've been to Glenbard West High School, we put an addition onto that building. That building is about 100 years old. And it's almost a seamless addition. It's all science labs. That was a really exciting project. And we've just done some really great things at each of the schools, but the solar installation, I think, was really, these kids are concerned about climate and this responds to that. And I think it's the responsible thing to do. Aside from that, the other side of it is the softer side. Last night's meeting, I don't know if you know, but Glenbard West was an undefeated team. So our district is 4 high schools, and we stretch from Carroll Stream, Lombard, Glen Ellen, and then we have Glendale Heights. I mean, we really are encompass a large. We even go into Hanover Park and parts of Bartlett. That's how big the district is. So we're about, I think at our height we were maybe 9,000 students, but we're lower than that right now. We're about 8,200 students. And high school is this is when school is really meaningful. I always say you really learn in the lower grades, but in high school is the game changer, right? These are really important things. But yesterday we honored 6 National Merit Scholars just out of Glenbard West yesterday. So, and what a diverse group of students. We had a winning basketball team who went to state. We had a forensics team that went to state. And it's just, those are the things that I think you realize why you do anything. And it's about the impact you have on the lives of students and being able to provide the facilities and the people to get them where they need to be. So yesterday we talked about plantings to encourage, a better perspective of our surroundings and hopefully help students in that transition from pandemic to, everyday living. So that's why we do what we do.
Thanks, Margaret. Can we hear from Emily? What's the most rewarding?
I have to echo what Margaret said. For me, the most rewarding part is just helping the kids in our community. My district is just a fantastic community. Everyone from the teachers to the kids. It's just a really, we have some of the most amazing teachers who are so invested in our community. And even our school board and superintendent, our superintendent has been in our district for years and years and years and years and years. And our school board president has volunteered for years and years and years, all the way, she's been a crossing guard, all the way up to being school board president. So just having a really invested community and getting to play even a small part in that really is impactful and meaningful to me. And just seeing some of the work that you've done, we'll get presentations from the board, from principals, and getting to see the feedback from our students is probably makes me the happiest. That's when I have the biggest smile at the meetings. We just did a new reading curriculum that's called ARC, that's supposed to really just have all of our schools have a culture of reading, to really get these kids excited to read and wanting to read. And particularly for my son, he's neurodivergent, and so reading's a non-preferred task for him. And just getting to see on that micro level about how just giving him the ability to choose what he wants to read, and meeting him where he's at, and then seeing that bloom into a love of reading on that level has been fantastic as well. So really just that feeling of community, I think, is most rewarding for me.
Thanks, Emily. And can we hear from Justin, the most rewarding?
Yeah, you know what, I would say it was something very much missed, during the pandemic, were events interacting with the public. So I think, the main thing I'm most excited about is our 4th of July parade, which, meeting people and being able to walk down the parade route, but even instead of that is just our events at the library. So when we had, we have a holiday open house every year, or, we used to have one every year. So being able to just sort of volunteer at a different station and go station to station to help out, with our staff, just different sort of, reading events that we would have, a kickoff for summer reading, just things like that. I would really enjoy that because, we all wear our name tags as trustees, and somebody say, hey, you know what, I really liked when, this staff member did this librarian did this, and to hear those good comments about the library and our staff is always very rewarding. And they let's be honest, they do all the work. They're actually the ones day in and day out doing that. But it is very nice to hear those comments and to know that you're a part of it. And yeah, that's what I always have found the most rewarding.
Thank you. It seems like maybe we should have flipped these two, because next I'm going to ask what's the most challenging, which we touched on a little bit in responsibilities as well. But yeah, can we start with, who am I starting with? I'm sorry. Emily again? Yes? I'm sorry, I lost track. Can we start with Emily?
That's okay. I think for me, the most challenging thing has been everything that Jim and Joyce just talked about. It's been very difficult to be on the receiving end of a lot of those attacks. It was like my third meeting, and I kind of sit out in the crowd, and I had people yelling in my face that I was a communist and a child abuser. And a lot of that is like, okay, I'm an adult. Like, that's like, I don't have, random people's opinions don't really hold much stake in like my personal value, but it's also a little unnerving because you think like, I'm just a mom in our community. Like, I could see you the next day in Whole Foods. Like, it's just bizarre to have that much like anger right in your face, especially based on things that aren't even true. So that's been really difficult. It kind of takes away from all of the great things that you're trying to do. And as Margaret was saying, like, we have meetings to get through. So it's very hard to sit through an intense public comment section at the beginning of your meeting and get yelled at about stuff that you're not even doing, that it has nothing to do with what's going on in reality. And then try and brush it off and go along with everything that all the planned business that you have. But other than that, I think if it was a normal year, it is a little challenging because as a school board member, you are in charge of holding the superintendent accountable, but you get your information from the superintendent and the board president. So like, as a board member, I can't just email a teacher or email another administrator and ask a question. Everything goes through the superintendent. And luckily, I really like our superintendent and I trust that I'm getting the correct information. But him and I talk about that all the time, like how it would be difficult if we have like a new superintendent come in or someone that you just didn't know that well, to have that level of trust. Like, I want to know just how my brain works. Like, I want to know all of the information, all of the perspectives, all the different opinions before making a decision. So it's hard and not in my nature to take a step back and look at the big picture and not get like bogged down in the minutia of issues. So that's probably what's been the most challenging for me so far.
Here we go. I'm sorry. Thanks, Emily. I think that's my greatest pet peeve as well. Justin, your most challenging.
Hey, you know what? I saw this question and I was trying to think of a good way to answer it here. So I think for me, the most challenging is trying to keep our board members engaged. And certainly it's changed as being a trustee to I've been a board president just since this last June here. So trying to make sure that people feel empowered. So our board is 7 trustees, including myself, and making sure that they have different things that they find interesting, or if they want to go out and have an initiative, if they really care about something, to make sure that we can take it up as a board with the understanding that not everybody is going to support it. So I think about the, equity, diversity, inclusion committee that it actually wasn't a standing committee. It was basically just a committee set up where somebody delivers a report, which one of our trustees did. And then the board pretty much, that specific committee, I should say, on EDI ended up, once the report is delivered, no longer exists. So trying to get people to sort of take those initiatives and take that responsibility and sort of step up, because I don't want to do everything. I don't want to monopolize everything and just be me talking the whole time. So, I would say that's probably the most challenging right now in my role is sort of getting people to step up and at the same time understanding that not everyone is going to support everything. So it's obviously something that we're wrestling with right now.
Thanks, Justin. And Margaret, most challenging.
I would say the public comment that extends your meetings, that has really little relevance to your real work, has been really frustrating. And I think the other part of that is sometimes some of that rhetoric can be persuasive to some of your board members, and that is dangerous. It takes you off of what your focus is, and I'm always a little concerned with that. But I think pandemic wise, I felt like the real challenge was creating a safe working environment for teachers. And I felt like I had to fight, and I did fight for testing, for mitigations. And then when we had that, kind of the whole masking thing fall apart, there was a good portion of the meeting that I argued pretty passionately about keeping things, the way they were. And we had the ability to do that, but there wasn't much for schools to stand on because of that court case. So you realize that how quickly that manipulation can take place. I'm concerned, for students. I'm concerned for teachers. I'm really just concerned for teachers. They have done the heavy lifting during these last 2 years, and frankly, I think they're exhausted. And you get a lot of from this public comment. What you get is a lot of teacher bashing, because if you support your teachers, then you're considered to be advocates for all the things teachers get, enormous salaries, pensions, whatever. It gets to be ridiculous.
Thank you, Margaret. I just-
Ursula, I'm sorry to
Yes.
interrupt, but I when Tom couldn't join us, I had I did you see my my post? Okay, great, because we do have a village trustee here who raced home from dinner at my request. So I'm not sure how this can all work, but Andrew Honig is here. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello, how are you guys? Sorry, kind of late, kind of not, right?
No, thank you for joining in.
Of course.
This is one of the perspectives that we were hoping to have too, is a village council or a village trustee perspective on this, because I know your role, the issues that you handle are a little different from the other entities that we've been hearing from. So I kind of wanted to just have you jump in right at this question about what do you find most challenging in the role that you serve?
Yeah, thank you, Ursula. So I think, obviously like the first challenging part is, getting elected to the position and then kind of playing catch up. I think that even now, 3 years in, I've been playing, just catch up, just trying to, figure out my role in the way in which, I had a lot of things I wanted to do going in, and you slowly learn that, it takes a lot of time to, prioritize certain issues. But I definitely think that what I expected from when I was running is definitely a lot different in the end. I think that is a lot of people's experiences. I see Flo laughing, dealing with When I first first got elected to the board, I was the chair person for the Community Promotion and Tourism Committee, and we dealt with like the Lilac Parade and grants for restaurants and things of that nature. And so that was in hotel motel taxes. And so that was a really interesting role that I had to learn, like I was, a new student in a new class. And I think that, going in and having that mindset that, that you don't know everything. And I think that, when I came in, I had all these ideas, but what I did was that I just listened for a long while until that I had finally concrete things that I had to say. I felt like I could eventually say something about, and definitely, maintaining a constant stream of communication with the public is super important. And I think that people take it lightly sometimes of, when you get emails, it's an everyday thing. It's, there's something, it could be a resident that has something to do with a bill that they need to pay at the village, or something with flooding or garbage. And I've been dealing with a lot of flooding lately. And, in my experience is that if you show that you care and that you show that you put every ounce of your being into trying to make a difference for even in the smallest circumstances for anyone, in the village, and, like you, I mean, all politics is local, and we all really do, every one of us tries to do our best. And of course you're going to make mistakes and you learn. But I think that overall, that in my role is that I learned to be a mediator between the people of Lombard, especially in District 4, and the board, because it's not always the case that, someone will, vocalize something in town and it gets heard, because it's on you as the trustee to make their voices heard. And I think that has been a key sentiment to me since I've been elected, and that, and we're elected based on district, and my only goal and my only obligation is to, my district and to the people of Lombard. So I think just taking time, listening, vocalizing when you feel like you have something to say, and not being afraid to vocalize it, because sometimes, people have been in these positions for so long, you're afraid to vocalize what you feel. But that's the reason why you run for these positions, because you want to make a real change locally. So
Thank you, Andrew.
yeah.
Alrighty. So to tack off our last couple of questions, hopefully it's gotten you thinking. Do you plan to run again for the same position? And if I could start with Justin.
Yeah, I will be honest, I'm thinking it'll be 8 years in next April that I'll be on the board. I'm pretty sure it's going to be my last go around here. If I do run again, it would be for a 2-year term, because you have the option of running either a 2-year or a 4-year term, just the way that our board is staggered right now. But I honestly feel it's good to have change on the board, just different opinions, different, people who have different passions and things, that perspectives and stuff like that. So I will say that I'm pretty sure I'm not going to. I could probably be persuaded against it, but it's just been a long time. I mean, 8 years is a long time to do anything. So I probably not, but I think it's probably a good thing just in terms of keeping up with our community, and having different voices in there. So that's just my thoughts on it.
They'll be sorry to lose you, Justin. Could I get Margaret to answer next? Are you planning to run again for the same position? Why or why not?
I am not. I have, when I complete my term, along with my involvement as a community member on the finance committee, it'll be 13 years. And so I think it's time for someone else to take the reins. And I have been looking for a candidate, basically among our committees, which is how I learned. I'd like someone from my finance committee to want to take over, because they really understand what's happening in the district, and will keep advancing where we are.
Thanks, Margaret. And Emily.
That's a very interesting question. I think I also agree with just that I do think it's important to have new voices and different voices. I think if anyone looks around at any of these local government boards, diversity is a huge issue. So I'm always, I think if there was another voice that was more diverse than my own, I think I would for sure, back out and support that candidate. But I think if there's nobody else that is going to run, I definitely would have another 4 years in me. Beyond that, probably not. I think it's about all I can take.
Oh man, I'm hearing some burnout here. Andrew.
I will lift the spirits a little bit. But no, kind of going off though, what Emily had just said, with new voices and the diversity, and diversity is truly an issue. I see, I was young, I was 21 when I was elected. Again, that is as much as I offer as diversity wise specifically is because I'm so young, but we could definitely, which is good, young, new voices, it's a different generation, but I do think that, to Emily's point, that there needs to be more, reasons to run instead of, a lot of people are a little hesitant because these are why these forums are so important, because it gives people a resource to, feel like they have support and feel like that a community is behind them, because people aren't alone. And that's, I think, something good about Indivisible, DuPage, and other, grassroots movement groups, because that is so important. But yes, I will be running again. I had been recently appointed to the finance chair of the Village of Lombard. So I feel that there is a lot to be done. And I, over the next 4 years, we have so many developments in Lombard. We have so many, new and explorative ideas, and I think that there is much progress to be made, but we have made in the last 4 years a lot of strides to making Lombard a better place and more welcoming for all. And I think this board, this past board, has been exemplary of that, especially in, we've changed as simple little things as that, I had a conversation with our mayor that, so each person, they were called chairman of a committee. And so we decided that we thought that it would be more inclusive to say chairperson, because not every, not every person that's going to hold that seat is going to be a man. So that's a very more inclusive, small thing, but it's a step in the right direction to something of a more inclusive environment for people, anyone involved. And I'm excited to say that I'm going to be running again, and I hope that we can keep doing great things for Lombard. So.
Awesome. Thank you for lifting our spirits, Andrew.
Of course.
So as you can hear, it kind of, after a few years, we need more volunteers to step up. So if anyone in the crowd, feels like this is something that they can do and take that baton for a little while, you're needed. And if you feel comfortable just starting slow, a committee, just attending regular public meetings, like they need you, they need your help. They need that baton passed every so often. I think I'm going to skip this next question in the interest of time. We had one asking about interfacing with the public, and I think we've covered a lot of that in other questions. So if you have something to add on interfacing with the public, please, wave me down before I move on. Yeah, we're good. I had one last question that's it's related to the previous one about running. What's one piece of advice for anyone wanting to run from your experience in running, from your experience in holding that position? If you were to talk to somebody who was thinking about running and on the fence, what piece of advice would you give? And I'm going to give Andrew a little bit of time to think about this and not throw him in first. Can I ask Emily to start us off?
Sure. Then this will touch a little bit on the interfacing question. I think if you have any interest at all, there's little things that you can do to start now. Attending the meetings, volunteering, really just immerse yourself in the community, especially with the school board. I mean, I try as a board member to go to, not even for like my kids' school, just any PTA event, any volunteer opportunity that I can. I try and just go and just be a face, you know, to interface with our community. And because I think a lot of people tend to make the decision to run, and then they start going, well, I'm going to volunteer here and there and try and get my face out. And not that that's not great, but I think it comes off as disingenuous. I think it's more impactful if people see that you're involved in the community and you have a passion for your community, and that's something that's going to stay with you whether you get elected or not. To me, I think, you know, it just, I mean, I'll never forget, I had Tara Costa Howard when I first moved in Lombard, came and knocked on my door and just asked me, like, what issues are you passionate about? And this was a non-election cycle. And never in my life have I ever had an elected official come ask my opinion about something and that had nothing at all to do with campaigning. And that always stuck out to me. So that's kind of the mentality that I've always had, is just, I guess, walk the walk. If you want to be involved, start getting involved now in any way that you can.
Good advice. Thanks, Emily. Margaret, one piece of advice.
I actually followed that method, right? Was involved before. I think the other advice is that you know that governance is, there's a business component to it, and you have to be prepared for meetings. You really have to dig into your packet. You need to ask the questions, you know, either to your board members. You also need to learn how to coalition build with your board members. But you really need to be prepared. And that is not always the case. And it makes for some people not, you know, not being, it makes a meeting go longer because they're asking questions that, you know, could have been addressed either in committee. You know, each of the committee chairs actually always briefs the board on what we discussed. And unless it's really complex, you know, you really break it down for the board and how the committee felt about something. And for me at finance, that's pretty huge. But I don't, you know, like I said, I think really having that dedication to, you know, reading through the materials and really understanding it is key in being very effective.
Agreed. Justin.
So my one piece of advice would be to run for, you know, municipal offices. So, you know, that our April elections in odd numbered years here in Illinois. And I think the reason I would say that is to echo Emily, that you have the most impact. And then it's also the easiest because nobody votes in these elections. I mean, it's between 10 and 20%. So you can target your voters that much easier. You can actually go door to door and talk with them. And there's a decent chance they're actually going to turn out and vote for you. So then to echo that as well, you know, I can't even tell you how many people when I went door to door saying, oh my gosh, you're a candidate. They came to my door, I'm going to vote for you. You know, I mean, just for the heck of it, just for that novelty. So, I mean, you have the most impact in your local community. It's the easiest and the cheapest. So run for municipal office. That would be my advice.
Thank you. I can't even count how many times I heard the same thing. Andrew, one piece of advice for somebody wanting to run.
Yeah, so kind of off of what Emily Schultz said about Tara Costa Howard, I actually, I think it was like a year and a half ago, me and Tara both together went door to door in my district asking people what the biggest concerns they had were, whether it was, you know, we kind of tagged off where it was like local, we talked about local things, we talked about state things, and so that was really, really cool. It was, I just didn't, and so, you know, I would say is that, you know, showing, like, again, walk the walk is a really important thing, because getting involved, like, you know, not just a committee, but showing that your vested interest in your community doesn't just lie on the fact that you want to run for something, but it's the fact that you will show the appreciation of the office you're running for. And I think that when you run for a position that has not, like when people have been appointed for so long and they've always have held these seats, when you create that opposition for that other person, it inherently, regardless of the outcome, will always have a positive benefit, because it will test the person in that spot if they deem that spot worthy enough to have. Because it doesn't hit someone until they have to work for it. And some people forget that you serve people, you don't serve yourself. You serve the people of wherever whether it's Darien or Lombard or Villa Park. You have, that is your one goal in mind, is making sure that people know that you're there. They know you hear them, and just going for it. And if people tell you otherwise, everyone is qualified. If you feel like you're not qualified, when I was initially running, I didn't feel that qualified, and I didn't feel like there's a lot of pressure and weight on me. But when you really want something, and when you really want to make a change and do good in this world, I think that is really important. And I think just get involved, and you have all of us to help you. These groups are so important in that way. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Of course.
I'm gonna kick it back to Flo to wrap up and ask any questions I forgot.
Oh, no, no more questions. Thank you, Ursula, and thank you to all our panelists. And Andrew, thanks for stepping in at the past the 11th hour. And
Of course.
thank you, Emily, for sharing your family with us. That was fun. I think it's Emily's bedtime.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having us.
Sure. So I'm hoping that this was helpful information. I did put the traindemocrats.org URL in the chat. I found that very useful when I was running for COD board. I ran at the same time that Emily did for her position. So I did, there's just so much to a campaign that you think that that's the hardest thing you're going to have to do, but it isn't. Serving is the hardest thing, but it's definitely an honor to do it. So thank you all for attending. I hope you'll spread the word to others. If there are any last comments, I do see a candidate in our midst. I don't know, Jen, if you want to introduce yourself before we take off.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'll wait till it. I just thought I'd stop in and listen because I'm Jen Ladish Douglas. I'm running for the House of Representatives in the 45th district. And I stopped in, I've been to some meetings in the past and was really interested in this. I have a 13-year-old in school and wanted to hear more about what all of you are working on and what you're doing. I'm running first and foremost because of healthcare. I hadn't, what you all said resonated with me about walking the walk and doing the work and listening to people. I've been working with the legislature for the last 5 years as a volunteer, trying to make change in healthcare. And so that is one of my big issues. Another one is safety in our communities. And that includes in our schools, for our teachers, for our children, and at large. And my third issue is really about fiscal responsibility and making sure our state is safe and responsible with funding we have. I will say that I have taught as an adjunct professor in the past. I have a child with special needs. And he is actually in public school, private school right now because of some special needs he's had. And I really appreciate all the work that's been done in our schools. And I appreciate everything all of you do for our communities. And I look forward to meeting you and working with you as time goes on. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to hear from you. Okay, everyone. Well, I think we've, I think it's bedtime. So thank you to all of our speakers. There's a lot of information to absorb here. We will send a link to the recording and to everyone, and feel free to share it with others. And with that, I extend one last thank you and wish everyone a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, guys, so another one, another meeting. So
You should probably hit not record.
stop